Hello, this is Dr. Saccuzzo again, and what we're going to be doing here is the final step, which is memorization. In fact, we have a trademark to describe this technique that we use. We call it cumulative memorization, and you're going to see very quickly why. Now, I've got a list up here as to what to do, and don't forget that we had a process in part 4, and in part 4 I asked you to write down what you want to memorize and learn. I asked you to condense it, to organize it, to try to use it. So now that you have that, then what you'll want to do is take that information in manageable chunks, and these have to be manageable chunks for you. It could be a paragraph, it could be a section of a hierarchy. If you created hierarchies, a section of it. You start out and you just go back and read it, or simply look at it. You don't really have to read it if you're so familiar with it, but look at it to refresh your memory as to what it is you're trying to overlearn. And that's really what this process is. You want to take that information you're trying to overlearn. You see, the first 4 steps are actually done, maybe not as effectively or efficiently, but they are done by most people that are trying to take a test. I mean, these are what you do. Now, the difference is if you do this final step of overlearning. This is what I learned when I stumbled on this technique. I learned that I was doing everything I thought I needed to do to excel in school, but I wasn't. However, when I added this final step, this overlearning step, just before the test, that's when my grades started to go consistently A, if not consistently #1 in the class, and passing any other test out there, licensing exams, law school exams, you name it. All right, so go back and read the information you're trying to memorize, a chunk of it. Now, what you should try to do is try to write it or type it without looking at it. Then check yourself, and I've been over this in another YouTube tape as well, which you can probably cross-reference and look at. Check yourself. If you make even the slightest mistake, figure out what your mistake was as fast as you can, and then write it out again, and continue this process until you've written it down once perfectly. Once you can do it perfectly, what that has done for you is it's encoded it properly. That's what you want. I mean, if you're memorizing something and what's actually you're memorizing is some inaccurate statement, then you remember the inaccurate statement. So you've got to get it in properly. You want it in perfectly. You keep at it until you have one perfect repetition. Then move on to the next chunk. Now, if it's a complex information or complex rule, then you can probably break that down into smaller parts. So break it down into manageable chunks. Let's take a look at that for a minute. All right, so you see here this little poem, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. All right, so what you would do is all your chunks. Well, here it looks like each line could be a chunk. So I'm going to start out with, I saw it, take me out to the ball game. Okay, now I'm going to add the next that says take me out with the crowd. So again, okay, start from the beginning, take me out to the ball game, take me out with the crowd. Simple. All right, now we go back. The next thing's to push the envelope, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. All right, now we start from the beginning, and we either try to write or type it. Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. If we get it right, we keep going. If we make a mistake, we note our mistake mentally and take it from the top until we can do it perfectly. So as you go down, it's a perfect encoding at that level. Now you go to the next level. I don't care if I ever get back. Now you take it from the top. Whole thing, take me out of the ball game, take me out with the crowd, etc. And you just keep moving through until you get one perfect repetition. At that point, stop and move on to the next chunk. All right. Once you've done that, you've got it perfectly in your mind, and it really is there. You could pass any multiple choice test, for example, in material, because that's merely recognition. But really, if you want to carry the next step, I mean, you want to excel, if you want to beat the other people who are also studying as hard as you, just before the exam, test yourself and make sure you have it right. And again, you start from the beginning and you go through. Now, what you would do in this final stage, which we call consolidation, is you're going to run through the whole thing, everything you have to know, concentrating sheerly on memorizing. You're only testing yourself now. You're not doing this cumulatively. You're just making sure you have it right. You take it a line or a paragraph or a poem at a time, whatever it may be, and make sure that you can either write it or say it in your head perfectly. And if you can, fine. And if you can't, work on it and maybe even write it down again. Oh, I got it now. Now move to the next. Make it quick. Make it fast. If you have a whole page, a page should take you about 20 minutes, and then you'll have it in your head. And using this technique, you will see a lot of great things happening, not just merely doing better in school or better on a test or passing the driver's test or passing some big exam, but you're going to find that this methodology will actually grow your brain. It'll force new brain cells to actually develop in your brain. You'll be expanding your mind. You won't have to go to these brain courses, build your brain. This is the best way to build your brain. And this knowledge that you gain through this procedure will be fairly permanent. I mean, if you really wanted to make it permanent, you'd wait a few months and then refresh it. But it's going to push toward being a part of your permanent store of knowledge.